Chapter 16. Inverse Invasion. Fade did not get a hero's welcome. The military plane landed, its cargo door opened when it came to a halt, and a strange combination of soldiers and white-coated doctors waited. Fade hesitated at the ramp's top, trying to think of some joke to hit the serious expressions, when Mayra came up behind him. "Do what they ask and it'll be fine," she whispered. "It's important." One soldier stepped ahead of the others, announced himself as Major McNichols, and asked Fade his name. "Faden Vance," he answered, not moving a step down the ramp. "But I'm guessing you know that already." "Being polite," McNichols replied. "What's going to happen next, Mr. Vance?" "Fade. Just Fade." "Fade, then." McNichols kept the same hard-as-hell face, unruffled in the slightest, reminded Fade why he detested all these formal organizations, too serious for their own good. "These techs here are going to draw your blood. You'll piss in a cup, provide cheek swabs and skin samples. You'll hand over that badge you have, and then we'll talk about what happens next." Fade laughed, derisive, cold. "Lot of demands that have nothing to do with saving the world right there, Major McNichols. How about we focus on the real problem?" "Tell me, Fade, can you click your tongue and rub your belly at the same time?" "Probably." "Then you can understand working on two problems at once. Right now, the threat doesn't seem imminent, and every other country on this earth is realizing a dead. Raker is an opportunity to learn a whole lot of new things." McNichols nodded at Fade's torso. "If what you and your friends told Mayra is accurate, then there's a chance some of this Grove's technology is still present in your body. There's a chance your badge, the only badge designed for a human, may offer a better chance to be copied. In other words, Fade, you can give us a chance to survive past this attack. Plus," Mayra added, still standing behind Fade, "the soldiers who will be going with you are still an hour or two out. Let's use that time." "Okay," Fade said. "I can get behind all that." "Good stuff. But here's the thing. Being a Raker's my job, and the way things are looking, that job's not going to be around much longer. I have a daughter." "What are you saying?" McNichols kept his composure, though Fade guessed the Major knew exactly what Fade was after. "I'm saying I want a guarantee. You get my blood, I get a 7-figure stipend. Least you can do." "Fade," Mayra started, only for Fade to hold up his hand to her face. "Let the Major answer." "I'll have it drawn up," McNichols replied. "Get down here." The pokes and pricks, swabs and scrapes went by quick, every vial ushered off by a runner as soon as the caps closed. Fade sat in a chair the whole time, answering questions peppered in by McNichols. All things Fade himself would have asked before going in on a mission. Setting, potential enemies, routes to pursue, ways to extract. "You have to understand, though," Fade said, "if the gardener wants us dead, I don't know that there's anything we can do to stop it." "It didn't stop you." "Yeah, but I get the feeling it wanted something else." "Something it got." "The missing FBI agent?" Fade winced. "Maybe." "Why do you think that is?" "What would the gardener want with that man?" "Same thing you want with me." "My guess, Ezra's filling in the lines for how humanity gets ghosted." McNichols glanced at Mayra, who'd acquired more coffee and a bland protein bar, and now stood nearby. "You believe your partner would give away that information?" McNichols asked her. "Don't think he'll have a choice," Fade said. "You keep acting like this is a normal thing you're up against." "It's not. The gardener doesn't have body you can shoot or a home you can bomb. This thing, it's been guiding the universe for a long time. I don't even know if it's really alive." "That's why we're not taking any chances." McNichols put a hand on Fade's shoulder as another draw wrapped up. "Go fill that cup," Then it's time to get geared up. One question, Major. I wasn't the only one that went to the Grove, and she knew it. Fade cocked his head. You going after my friends too? Once we find them, Mayra answered. If any of you have the answers, Fade, we'll get them. Even if you don't know they're there. Dead. Ezra was very dead. Veronica fell as she left the void, her hands planting on cool metal, battered shoes to her right leg to legs, to a body, to a head with eyes rolled back. Blood ran from Ezra's nose, vanishing into his shirt. His chest didn't rise and fall, and Veronica didn't exactly have time to take a pulse. The slit wasn't closing. Behind her, the gate to the cream void revealed Daffodil reversing her momentum, apparently able to control herself at will. She set aside the calmolite and floated towards the opening. Daffodil wasn't speaking, but the firm mouth, the hands stiff at her sides, suggested nothing too kind would be coming Veronica's way. Best, then, to leave, except the room didn't have a door. Didn't have much besides the chair and scary bits pressing down on the man. Of course, why would Daffodil, the gardener, have human-like things, doors and whatnot? Why would it conform to her expectations? She pushed panic away, took a step away from the slit, looking for options, and saw one. Ezra had a gun, there in his waist holster. Veronica tugged it free, flicked off the safety. The weapon was loaded, ready. Thanking her bodyguard for his insistence on her survival training, Veronica slipped around the chair's back, crouching and coming up behind the slit. From the back, the slit revealed itself as a one-way door. A black scar, no creamy void. Veronica almost touched it, but kept her hands steadied on the pistol, held it where she hoped Daffodil's head would be. Now. The slit vanished, and there Daffodil was, looking away from Veronica. Point-blank range. The girl pulled the trigger. The gun fired so loud in the small room that Veronica almost dropped it, stumbling back with ringing ears, a head suddenly pounding. She hit the wall, sought to raise the weapon again, only to see nothing there. Daffodil had vanished, and beyond, no bullet hole sat in the wall. Got you, Veronica whispered, words she felt more than heard over the gun's residual ringing. She slumped to the floor, breathing hard, holding the gun in both hands. Seconds crawled by, Veronica figuring any moment would bring Daffodil back. She'd get sucked into the void again, or crushed like Ezra. The body brought Veronica back to the moment, and, slowly, she staggered upright. Went over to Ezra and checked for a heartbeat, a pulse, found neither. The man's crooked grimace said he hadn't died peacefully. Like Ellsworth and his crew, Veronica found herself staring at another violent demise. At least, this time, she could close his eyes. Atop Ezra's head sat a strange device, what appeared to be an adjustable cap with wires and mesh rising up into the room's ceiling. Twin barbs drove in from the device into his ears, a realization that prompted Veronica, already shaky, to vomit up what little remained in her stomach. Another stain on Ezra's clothes. Ezra, Veronica said, using his sleeve to wipe away the residue. How did you get here? A mystery destined to take the back seat, as Veronica was still in a room with no exit. She had a loaded gun, could breathe thanks to the Grove's miracle machines. But what now? Maybe a minute. Take a minute and think. If she'd killed the gardener with that bullet, if she's destroyed him, then what? Was she trapped here forever? A fear to worry over later. Right now, Veronica, taking a surreal pleasure in every step after floating adrift, walked to the room's far corner. As far away from Ezra as she could get. She sank to the floor, still holding the gun, and found herself shaking. Tears welled. She'd thought everything was over, thought her life had no purpose left, and now here she was. At the isolated end of everything, all Veronica wanted was another day. As it often did, Saving the world required more coffee. Thalia's apartment, however, had been emptied of the same, so the pair readied up to take a walk. Thalia flipped on the TV while Eve hit the shower to blast off remaining bleariness. The talking heads raved about the invasions and what they meant, alternating between doomsday takes and praises for various responses across the globe that had blown the attackers away. "We always thought we should be afraid of the aliens," declared one puffed-up anchor, "but it turns out they're the ones who should be afraid of us." "Sure, buddy," Thalia muttered, then checked her phone. Nothing from Fade, nothing from Jaycee, neither surprising. Was she expecting a pre-assault picture, with Fade flashing a peace sign in front of a heavily armed squad? And Jaycee, well, Thalia was already doing what she'd learned to do over the decades. Whittle away memories until only bland, pleasant flashes remained, kept the heartache to a minimum, stunted the urge to find strong substances. Eve was still getting soaked when the apartment's door rattled. Not a knock, but a shake, blunt and irregular. As if someone wanted to break the thing down, but didn't quite know how to go about it. Thalia drew a sidearm from its pocket and stood. She thought about calling Eve's name, but kept quiet. Whomever was here might not know where Thalia was, and an ambush beat giving up surprise. But who would show up, unannounced, at her place? Some Navarro thug hell-bent on revenge? A Pline flunky searching for Veronica? Both options faltered as the door rattled again. This time the handle shook, too, the person twisting it apparently unfamiliar with how door locks worked. The shower ran. Thalia crept closer, sliding to the room's wall, where the door, if it swung open, would offer a little cover. Another rattle. A faint sound, like a spitting hiss. A cat warning off a pet. Taking a chance, Thalia took a long step up against the door and peeked through the pinhole. At first, the shape had her thinking teenager in a navy-hooded sweatshirt. Shorter, thicker, with a face cast in shadow, the figure again made the hissing noise and rattled the door. That settled the matter. This thing wasn't human, which made it a Raker, which made it an enemy. Thalia grabbed the door's handle, raised the sidearm in her left hand, and, in a single motion, opened the door while stepping backward into the room. The creature stood still, 2 solid meters away, ready to take Thalia's bullets. Without the pinhole's limitations, with the TV's direct light, Thalia caught a disturbing feature array. First, the thing's face, if it really had one, seemed set where a human's stomach would be. Several spherical eyes floated in a swamp-green section near its chest, while a mouth dangling at least 3 narrow tongues opened beneath it. A discolored blue and rust-red hump occupied the hood, which revealed itself as a fluttering skin cloak, falling down around the 1.5-meter tall thing with occasional membrane attachments here and there. Midway down that cape, 2 clawed hands, if you wanted to call them that, extended their webbed digits towards Thalia. Its feet were duck-like, also webbed and sprawling out wide on the hallway floor. "Don't shoot!" Eve called, standing wrapped in a bath towel, hand outstretched. "It's a friend!" "You sure?" "Because I'm very much inclined to pull the trigger." "Please," said the creature, the word coming out from those tongues in a spitting mess, very much like that hissing cat. "Allie." Thalia did not lower the gun, even as Eve told the creature to come inside and shut the door behind it. Eve introduced the alien as Pefit, a Raker from a world far, far away from Earth. A watery, muddy giant. They were just now exploring concepts like flight, a couple centuries behind humanity's own progress. Pefit took this history lesson in silence, those tumbling eyes focusing on Thalia even as they bounced around. "Great, I'm sure that'll be useful somehow," Thalia said when Eve stopped to take a breath. "More important question, though. What's Pefit doing here? Aren't all the other Rakers supposed to be grinding human bones to make their bread? Bread, Pefit spat, and Thalia eyed the gross glob now soaking the carpet near her shoe. She'd charged the cleaning to the gardener. A bad joke, Eve said, but a good point. What are you doing here, Pefit? Little time, the creature replied, twitching its claws towards its mouth. Machines won't work long. Movement growing. Rakers are frightened, angry. We want to break the gardener. I have commitment. Eve's mouth dropped. Thalia whistled, put up her gun. It could happen to any of us. Too risky now, Pefit continued. Come back, draw it out, and we will destroy it. See, Thalia said, that's a plan I can get behind. Being put in your place was never a pleasant experience, and Fade, despite the world-ending stakes, despite the needles in his arm, despite the coffee, found himself getting awed. For years, he'd been near the Bay Area's enforcer upper echelons, able to deal with anything drug dealers, tech gangsters, and greedy bookies cared to throw at him. Guns and knives, backstreet brawls, and moldy office stare-downs came and went with ease. Crossing legal lines came without a care, because all the local cops were either under particular payrolls or knew some things weren't worth it. The arsenals rolling in on planes and trucks, the special ops teams assembling around Fade, showcased gear and ability that made it very clear he, Thalia, Oscar, and everyone who claimed to be a boss in his old life could get crushed in a moment. Their skills didn't even register as a threat to Fade's own government on any real scale. You're looking sweaty, Mara noted, bringing another coffee refill as the afternoon tilted towards evening. Don't be nervous. Fade nodded at the primary team setting up before him, breaking out weapons and accessories from big trunks that had appeared off another plane. It's a little intimidating. You were chosen by the closest thing to a literal god this universe has. Trying to pump me up, Mara? Absolutely. If my partner's still alive, you're the best chance of rescuing him. Saving the world's pretty important too. I'm opening a door. That's it. Mara shook her head. Definitely not. Any one of those. They have two objectives, Fade. Take out the gardener, if possible. Secure the portal. That one's the most important, but neither one applies to you. Why are you the one telling me this? Fade looked around. Shouldn't that tight-ass McNichols be giving me the orders? He's busy, and they think I'm your friend. Who's they? I'll bet you can imagine. Point is, Fade, you need to loop as fast as you can. Mara took out a phone from her pocket, a chunky satellite beast. You're going to get that portal going. Get back here, call for a pickup, and head right back in with reinforcements. Other people can use the badges. Mara tilted her head. Could be, but until we get more and get better, every badge is risk. Right now you're a guarantee. So jump in, jump out, and do it again. You make it sound so easy. There's an alien horde between us and that portal. I thought they didn't want to die for this gardener. Maybe. That'll change if death's on the table anyway. Mara didn't answer, but her face did the job. If the creatures resist, obliterate them all. Simple enough, terrible enough. Just what the gardener was threatening to do with Earth and all the other worlds, too. Okay. Fade drained the coffee, threw it at a nearby trash bin, missed wide left. More the one soldier chuckled. I'm ready. Fade's readiness didn't change anything for the soldiers, so despite his toss and declaration, he and Mara still had to putter for another hour. McNichols did come over and outfit Fade with fresh body armor, a couple of incendiary grenades for emergencies, and, after Fade refused guns, a hard combat baton. Not everything can be punched, McNichols said as Fade extended, then collapsed the weapon. Speed is your game here. Don't slow down, loop it. Yeah, I got that. Then do it. They assembled in a tight circle, Fade in the middle with 8 loaded-up specialists around him. McNichols noted that future groups would include more ancillary equipment, things to return samples from the grove, cameras, and the like. At first, though, every spare pocket carried ammo, medical supplies, food, and water. That last bit had Fade reminding the bunch that they wouldn't feel hungry, wouldn't need a drink over there. Unless the gardener can turn it off, McNichols, who wasn't going on the mission himself, noted. This is hostile territory. You won't have reinforcements. Your objectives are clear. Keep Fade alive, hold the portal, and save humanity. Sounds like a bad movie, said one of the soldiers, drawing a laugh. Make it one where we win. Fade, you're clear. Thanks for the pep talk, buddy, Fade said, drawing just the narrowed eyes he was looking for. He held out his hands, spread them wide. Get a finger in here, people. So far as I know, I need to be the one holding you for this to work. Digits met his palms, and Fade sank into the black opal, the badge that had been his constant companion of late. As easy as breathing now, and the hangar, the weapons, the world blurred away. When it came back, Fade saw the white stones, the quiet room. The squad faded in around him, immediately drawing their weapons. They all turned towards the closed exit, drawn by a particular sound known very well to each of them, one that shouldn't have been here. Not yet. Gunfire. Pefit's rebellion plan had merit, had Thalia's enthusiasm, particularly since it didn't require her going back to the grove. She offered Eve her weapons, which the Raker took, each one getting a little lesson from Thalia on how it worked. Pefit watched, at first asking questions, then halting as the grove's magical translation machinery began to fail. A fascinating thing, listening to fluency degrade to simple nouns, verbs, and then just noises. With the grove's machines guiding its movements, Pefit's folding skin method of making noise had wrapped into sounds Thalia and Eve understood. Without that guidance, Pefit fell back on habit, and that habit produced nonsense. This would be so cool to dig into, Thalia said as Eve practiced drawing and returning a sidearm to Thalia's shoulder holster. How everything works over there. It's genius. If this works, you might get your chance. As if. Eve, we're bit players. Big shots for a moment, maybe, but once Earth's militaries and governments get their hands on the grove, assuming we don't all die in the attempt, there's no way you and I are ever going back. If we have a badge, they can't stop us. Aside from blasting our guts the moment we appear over there, you're right. Eve pinched her mouth into a sour look, then nodded at Pefit. Ready? The alien quivered, seemed to get Eve's meaning, and stepped forward on its squat legs. Less than half Eve's height, the creature looked more like a bad special effect than a powerful alien, but Thalia kept her mouth shut, sat in a chair, and watched. After the pair disappeared, she'd go back to Oscar's, give him the lowdown, and then take a much-needed nap. It'd feel real good to leave saving the world to other people. As Eve reached out to grab Pefit's claw, the door rattled again. A much more human knock this time, sharp, and followed by a question. Eve, are you in there? A voice Thalia didn't recognize, one suffused with authority's sharp bark. Please open the door. This is the police, and we're here to escort you. Eve glanced at Thalia, who stood, shaking her head. Don't say a damn word. Just go. The door rattled again. The command repeated, followed by feet shuffling outside. We can't leave you, Eve said, avoiding Pefit's reach. They might not be friendly. Guarantee they're not friendly, but if you're gone, I think I'll be fine. The door shuddered. Not a knock this time, but a ram. The next might send it flying in. I don't think they just want to talk, Eve said. Come on, Thalia. Now! Damn it! Thalia spun, grabbed Pefit's other claw as the door blew off the hinges and flew into the room. Shouts to stop, to wait poured in, and Thalia turned to see armed, confused police officers. They might have noticed Pefit. They might have wondered what two people and an unknown alien were doing holding hands. If they were, Thalia didn't get the chance to ask, because she vanished and appeared in green water. Her clothes soaked through immediately, and the breath she hadn't been holding sputtered. Instinct fired and Thalia kicked, rising up to the top of the thankfully small room. Her head cleared the surface. Her mouth sucked in that beautiful, amazing grove air. Eve rose next to her, splashing up and coughing. The watertight room was otherwise bordered with the same white stones as the human landing point, though its door didn't share the plain wood workmanship. A circular silver hatch, with two valves on either side. Thalia noticed both because Pefit swam that way, its skin cloak billowing behind it like a cuttlefish. Pefit put a claw on each valve and twisted. With a sucking sound, the water drained and left the pair soaked and sitting on the stone floor. Thalia closed her eyes for a second, hating how much better she felt already. The grove working its magic on her exhaustion, her sore muscles, her chapped lips. "This place," Thalia murmured. "Patching me up just to kill me." "Well, if anyone tries to do that here," Eve said, "you'll be able to take a lot of punishment." "Cheering me right up, Eve." Chapter 17. Bullet Time. Hex took charge, dishing orders to one nickname after another, while Fade peeked around the door's edge. The gunfire tossed away any confused wonder at the grove, setting the 8 specialists into death-dealing design. Hex, across from Fade, hand pointing here and there, split his squad into halves, both arranged in lines back from the doorway. Fade had given the group a short briefing before the jump, so the squad knew the stone balcony beyond, the strange drop to a sudden float at the tower's bottom, and the broad stairs to all the fun. The gunfire, almost constant, as if a team were taking turns with reloads so bullets never stopped whizzing through the air, came from right outside. A little to the left, too, with the thudding crack of blasted stone coming from the ring's far side, shooting at a Raker who'd picked the wrong time to jump to the grove. Hex, bearded and dark, gave Fade a look that said he ought to hang back, a suggestion Fade was just fine to follow. He nodded, and Hex waved the group behind Fade forward. They swam by him, gear on belts, legs, and torsos bumping Fade's own. Words broke out as they hit the balcony, spitting back and forth in English as a treaty was propositioned and signed with killer urgency. "Guess we're all friends here?" Fade asked, as Hex waved the others through, leaving the pair the last in the room. "Have to be," Hex replied, nodding Fade forward. "No matter what they say back at base, here we're in enemy territory. We take the friends we can get, sort it out after. A decent plan if everyone played along." Fade scurried out onto the balcony as the gunfire stopped. It had made a mess of the door opposite the human zone, shredding its wood, or at least the stuff that looked like wood, into busted bits. Strands clung to the doorframe, offering a broken view of an empty white room beyond. If something still lived there, Fade realized it wouldn't for long. A grenade, thrown by one of Hex's boys, flew across the balcony and through the damaged door. "Cover!" someone shouted, and everyone around Fade ducked behind the stone. Hex pulled him down, only for Fade to shake him off. The grenade popped, the rumble shaking the floor and pouring smoke from the room. If something died within, it had done so without a sound. "Clear it," Hex ordered, and the first 4 he'd sent through circled the balcony behind 3 other soldiers, ones from some other country, some other nation looking to plant their flag in a new universe. "This is the drop?" Fade looked down. The faint blue glow off the gray floor still shone. He'd wondered if the gardener would turn it off, flip a switch and keep every raker locked in the tower's odd design. That it hadn't made Fade wince. The gardener must think it's going to win easy. "Looks like it's working," Fade said, starting over, only for Hex to grab him again. "What?" "Need to keep you alive." "Wait a minute. Isn't time, like, of the essence?" Hex looked across the way, to where the soldiers were coming back from the bombed room. One flashed a thumbs up. Did that mean a Raker had been decimated? That the room was clear, or what? "They can go first," Hex called across the balcony, drawing surprised looks from the foreign soldiers. "You earned it." "Just jump," Fade added, when the three looked at each other, and Hex, confused. "That circle down there'll catch you." A little like jumping into a pool. Their frowns only deepened, but buried in gear, looking like the best dealers of death humanity had to offer, confidence found purchase. One pulled himself onto the ledge, then, with a last nod towards his friends, launched off. He fell, everyone watching, until he neared the bottom. Slowing to a stop, the man caught himself on his feet, raised his rifle to his shoulder, and waved the others to follow. "Told you," Fade said to Hex. "I know. But you could have been wrong." "Then that man would be dead!" Hex's eyes glittered as the humans began leaping off the ledge around them. Better them than us. The cold calculus notwithstanding, the bodies didn't break. Instead, they caught on the phantom float and rolled off. The first two flopped around, victims of surprise, but the rest landed with weapons raised. The Rakers apparently didn't stick around to greet the attack. The whole squad, followed by Hex and Fade, jumped, ending in a joint tangle at the tower's base. "What's back there?" Hex asked, nodding towards the dark alcoves. The soldiers fanned out across the whole space, opposing countries united by alien unknown into a group 20 strong. "Ambush?" "Hope not," Fade replied. "Never bothered to check. Never saw anyone else go through them either. You get a vibe, here, that there's places you can go, places you shouldn't." Hex considered. Hard to pass on a mystery, where any kind of threat might lurk. At the same time, 20 soldiers wasn't an army. The objective lay down the stairs, and with its capture, Fade could start looping in reinforcements. "Portal first," Hex said, loud enough to carry to the other soldiers. "Once we have force advantage, we can take territory." Not a voice dissented. Fade almost whistled. This kind of discipline didn't make it to the cash-grabbing conmen he tended to work with. Helped, he figured, that these people weren't in this just for themselves. A noble cause kept the fighters in line. The stairs down to the audience tables should have been crowded. A natural choke point. Empty, and when the soldiers stopped their advance a few steps down, Fade pushed his way up front to see why. "They're talking," said one, his East Asian accent making clear he wasn't one of Hex's. They were the Rakers, and they'd bundled themselves up in a big group. Creatures across the possibility spectrum, tentacles and vines, legs and amorphous blobs, heads and neural nets splayed through bubble-like skin. They huddled, a swarm in a loose press, not trying to crush but to listen. As to who they were talking with, listening to, that was clear enough. At their center, somehow, impossibly, stood Thalia and Eve, along with a Raker Fade knew. Pefit, a goofy little creature who'd spoken often of some coming miracle future when all the species in the universe could live in harmony. Fade had written Pefit off as hopelessly optimistic, a calculation proved right by all the chaos around them. "They're grouped up," Hex said. The unspoken option. Grenades or other explosives might take out the whole batch, finish the fight before it started. That hex had voiced it, that he hadn't acted, suggested he knew this wasn't the behavior of an enemy force. "Not yet," Fade said. "I think this might be a way out. The Rakers, before, were desperate, under orders. Maybe they've changed their minds." "I can't bet my soldiers' lives on it." "Nor Earth's. Fade's life is what he meant. No going down there without an escort or an explosive preamble." "If they're talking," Fade said, "then they're not attacking. Not us, not home." We wait. See what they have to say. The wait lasted only a few seconds. Pefit's meeting of the universe's minds faltered, with a line splitting the space between the Rakers and the humans. A slit Fade knew well, and one followed by a bent, hunched thing. Taller than any human, close to 4 meters if Fade had to guess, the creature stepped out on large claws. 3 long legs extended to a ball of a torso, one with 4 spindly arms ending in flopping, seaweed-like tendrils. Several eyes on swiveling stalks extended from the top. All that would have been odd enough, except the creature wasn't, well, alive. At least, not wholly. Skin and limbs mixed rust-red and dirt-brown biology with cold blue and silver metals. Wires and cords cut in and out of the creature like a bad science project. A bulge near its back sparked and puffed indigo smoke as those claws came to rest on the stairs. Behind it, the slit closed. The creature teetered, then righted itself, splitting those eye stalks, those wide irises bearing an unnatural clarity between the Rakers and the humans. "The hell is that?" Hex asked. "My guess? You're looking at the closest thing to God any humans ever seen." The gunfire dive had been a first. Thalia circled back to those fast few seconds after Pefit had dumped them into the Grove's stone tower. Drenched and dripping, Pefit had wrenched open the door and scooted the human pair outside. Its billowing skin went wide on the balcony as Thalia and Eve followed the popping noises both knew too well. Thalia told their guide what the gunfire meant, and Pefit countered with a leap off the balcony, a blitzing descent. Thalia didn't see who was shooting, couldn't tell if the shooters saw them either. The intruders hadn't yet taken the leap. Tough to believe a fall like that wouldn't kill you. Thalia and Eve hit the tower's base and bounced off, Pefit ushering them to the stairs. Time, obviously, was of the essence. Rakers waited, not for them, but for an attack. The alien menagerie stood, floated, or bobbed in ranks, seemingly ready to rush the first soldiers to leave the tower. That intimidating phalanx quivered as Pefit breezed its opening argument, begging for a moment's conversation. A few words could save a lot of lives. Pefit had done its homework. At its first pitch, Rakers piped up in agreement, their words whisking to Thalia's ears in all sorts of flavors. Tremors, lisps, high-pitched squeals all echoed Pefit's ask, and drowned out half-hearted dissent. Given what Thalia had seen here just a day ago, a whole horde ready to murder her, the change in tenor was as disorienting as the Grove's miraculous repairs. Of her rocket fire, not a sign remained. "Follow close," Pefit said to her and Eve. "This is our chance." That chance played out now as Fade and his heavily armed pals flooded out onto the steps. Pefit had bought the Rakers' attention, offered them a nifty carrot in overthrowing the gardener. No more arbitrary extinctions, no more serving the random whims of a creature who'd left sanity far, far behind. A compelling offer put to the test by the monstrous thing squeezing out onto the stairs between both groups. Thalia really wished she still had that rocket launcher. "That's it," Eve said, voice hollow. They stood shoulder to shoulder, Pefit before them and Rakers all around. The gardener. "You sure? Because if I had all the universe's resources at my disposal, I sure as hell wouldn't look like that." It can look like anything it wants. Then how do you know? Because who else would it be? Eve pointed a finger at the blue smoke puffing from the gardener's back. It's hurt. How? Eve shook her head. The gardener seemed to freeze the conversation, the thoughts of everyone in the grove. Aliens and humans alike waited for the mess of a monster to make a move, which made a certain grim sense. Thalia had fired a rocket at this thing from almost point-blank range, and it had dodged the missile. That sort of reaction time said any attack was likely to end poorly, but something had punched through. Means it's not a god, Thalia said, putting a hand on Pefit. Get your gang together. It's in between both sides. This is our chance. Don't think so. Eve took a step back, found herself blocked by a black, scaly block of a creature. It chose to go there, Thalia. If the Rakers were confused, even paralyzed, the humans took a different approach. After a moment's inspection, Fade, there at the stairs' top, shouted something Thalia didn't catch. Not that she needed to. The rifle snapping up, the bullets flying with loud cracks answered any questions. She expected the gardener to dodge, to disappear or hold the bullets in place, just like movies and books had foretold. The big bad never just took it on the chin. The gardener did, and it suffered. Shots tore into the creature, some passing clean through on the other side. Red and green spray flew everywhere. Eve pulled Thalia down, but the woman shook off the grab. These weren't idiots. The humans knew what they were doing, and their fire sailed over the Rakers. Again, the gardener had put itself in an easy spot. Another step or two down, and any missed shot would have found collateral damage, almost as if it had put itself in the perfect spot to die. But why? The gardener collapsed, crumpling to the stairs. Its lopsided fall had the creature rolling down 1, 2, 3 steps, close to the Rakers, where it came to rest with its oozing limbs splaying wide. Fade and another soldier gave another shout, and the shooting, already slowing, came to a formal end. Silence. Then panic. The Rakers around Thalia, who only moments ago seemed ready to rebel, surged around her towards the gardener's body. Alien forms buffeted her, knocking Thalia into Eve, and both of them to the ground. Pefit helped them up as the Rakers left the pair behind, its billowing skin cloak twitching with agitation. They mourn, Pefit said, explaining the obvious. Not for the gardener, Eve continued, watching the strange gathering. Some Rakers seemed to be trying to help the gardener, shouting in their tremors, their gusts, their scents for medical supplies. Others simply watched, as if sensing this was a moment worth remembering. For its possibility. The easy road to enlightenment? Thalia said. Would you give up a path to perfection, even if the path itself wasn't perfect? This seems pretty damn far from perfect. It was the only path we had. Pefit turned in place, its eyes swiveling this way and that. It's not changing. Yeah, because it's dead. The grove stays the same. Unaltered, the gardener was its force and life, but in its absence, we stay the same. Ought to be a good thing, Thalia said, folding her arms as the Rakers kept up their wailing cries, 100 different funeral rituals going on at once. Means we might be able to use this place. Up above, the humans watched with weapons ready, if not up and aiming. Fade met Thalia's eyes and tilted his head. Know what's next? Thalia shook her head. Cooler minds might suggest a snap conference, a gathering to set terms. Bring all the Rakers, the humans together, and have them hash out who gets to go to the grove and why. Trading terms, backup plans if the grove bites it, and so on. The sort of thing her Uncle Oscar might have jumped on. Pefit, Thalia said. Now's the time. The Rakers need a new leader. You're it. Lead! Build what's next. Pefit's fluttering form billowed faster. That's not me. Not my people. We hunt, we eat. We strive to make both of those easier. Without the gardener's threats, I can go back and never come here again. What? Pefit didn't answer, instead breaking for one of the audience tables. Thalia squinted at the creature's back. You assumed it wanted a new age when it wanted independence, Eve said, her voice still sounding numb. Who knows what any of these species will want, what they'll be able to accept? This is the moment, Eve. If they hesitate. A clack sounded, the bounce of boots on steps. The humans, with Fade in the lead, streamed down the stairs. Not all, though. Some 4 or 5 kept their position at the top, one watching back inside the tower. The others pushed through the confused Rakers, heading towards Eve and Thalia. Fade reached them first, gave them both the once-over. Alive and well, he said as Thalia noticed the same about him. Killed God without losing a single man. Not too bad. The other operatives split, several going towards the humans' audience table. 3 more went to the portal's dormant bulk, while the others fanned out in a loose perimeter around the gathered Rakers. Those aliens were starting to move past grief and confusion, their tentacles, vines, hair snapping towards the humans in questioning jerks. You have a plan for this? Thalia asked Fade, because things are on an edge right now. Nobody thought it'd be this easy. Fade scratched at his nose. They're going to set the portal back home, then I'll get another wave. Should be enough, then, to hold all this. Hold? Eve asked. You mean take control? Fade shrugged. Job's done, Eve. We did it. Hurrah and all that. Now we get to go home. Or you do. I get to figure out where Jaycee went. What about them? The Rakers? There's no gardener, no Rakers. They go home. Bye. Fade, you can't believe it's that simple, Thalia asked. There's no way they'll all do that. They will, and if they don't, Hex and his boys will shoot them. Not ideal, but I'm not calling the shots here. Fade put a hand. Don't argue with me. It's not my call. I just want to find my daughter. Jaycee's important, Fade, but someone's going to pull a trigger here in a minute. One of these Rakers is going to make the wrong move, and then everything's going to hell. It already has, Eve added. Behind them, the portal spun up. Not to Pefit's world, but to a stretch of New Mexico desert, identified by a fuzzy green highway sign reading Albuquerque. Thalia looked over towards the fluttering alien, found Pefit astride away from its table. Next to it, an operative stood with his gun leveled in Pefit's face. I never signed up to be a saint, Eve, Fade said. The deal's changed, and it looks like the grove is ours. I'd suggest getting out while you can. Without a second glance, Fade strode towards the portal, only for a bright flash to beat him there, and the silver metal construct blew apart. You change your reasons in a life like his. First, there was excitement, living outside the lines while Fade's friends, his family punched clocks and counted the hours till Friday night. The money wasn't always better, but Fade earned it in cash stacks rather than stale deposits to a checking account. Then he fell in love, and the solo became a duet, an exhilarating tango that could have gone on forever were it not wiped by Jaycee. He told Hex to shoot the gardener without any negotiation, without ploys and plots, bargains and bets, because Fade needed to get to his daughter, and the gardener stood in his way. The god fell apart with a whimper, an act surprising enough that Fade didn't think too hard about it. Why, when the gardener had underestimated humans every step of the way? Ignoring Thalia and Eve's concerned looks was easy enough. The portal was right there. A quick loop, with the Rakers already cowed, and Fade would have his free run of the grove. A chance to use the audience, find Jaycee, and go get her. The match had turned his way. The game was almost won. Then why was he on his back? the grove's hard stone a poor cradle for his head. Pain stabbed from his arms, his legs, and Fade's right eye held a crimson sheen from blood running in. He blinked, tried to sit up, found himself unable to, but he saw well enough. The portal, just a few strides away, was gone. A half circle, burning at both ends, stood there. His ears rang, the echoing fading into pops, shouts both human and not, and, beneath it all, a thundering rhythm, a command rattling his bones. If you want to return home, kill them. Every single one. Chapter 18. Space Shift. Mayra's experience said plans were best made with backups. She'd escorted Fade to the base, and after he vanished with Hex and his squad, Mayra was left alone and adrift. Major McNichols set about prepping the next crew, as Fade's hopeful loop time was only an hour. So Mayra refilled her coffee, popped off to the restroom, and wondered, as the day sloped towards dinner, whether she'd been forgotten. Being a fly on the wall wasn't an unusual role for an FBI agent, and Mayra fell into it readily enough, observing, listening, and drifting about the background. Someone would tell her, eventually, where to go. If no call came by late evening, she'd hitch a ride to a barracks and claim a bunk for the night. Backup plan made, Mayra watched McNichols and his machinations. At first, the assembled squad looked like the first one. All assault rifles, grenades, and tactical gear. As the clock ticked, though, McNichols put on a deeper frown. His phone buzzed time and again, interrupting briefings. The last one came with a new arrival in the large hangar, serving as the operations base. 2 soldiers escorting another wearing a bulky black backpack. The trio went up to McNichols and exchanged a few words. McNichols gave the backpack man a dead stare, as if gauging the courage in the man's soul, then nodded. Worse, McNichols then turned to Mayra and waved her over. "I know this isn't your usual assignment," McNichols said, "but I'm going to draft you into this." All 4 sets of eyes settled on her, judgment ready. Mayra said nothing. "This backpack is our insurance," McNichols continued. "There's a bomb in there powerful enough, we hope, to take the Grove out of existence. Or, failing that, wreck it bad enough to buy us time. Fade's taking too long, and we haven't heard a word from inside. There's 2 badges left here, and not a soul that knows how to use one. I'm hoping you can fix that, so we can send another team in." "Why me, and not any of your soldiers?" "Because I don't know what's going on over there. I don't know if Fade and Hex and their entire team were vaporized in moments. I don't know if they have total control, but the way back isn't working, or if it's something in between." Those hard eyes softened, just a little. "What I do know, you're the only person here trained to talk with these things. If the gardener has our people hostage, you might get them free." "Trained to talk?" Mayra looked at the bomb. "You mean threaten? Call it what you want. We need that gateway open or permanently closed. I'm not risking any more soldiers until I know what's waiting over there. Get it done, Agent." "Won't risk soldiers, but you'll risk me." "Are you saying no?" Mayra gave as good as she got in the glare department. She knew she could turn and walk right out of there. Leave McNichols to figure it out. Send one of his gunnery buddies instead. That might get her through the night alive, but Ezra, her partner, was over there. Could she say no to a chance at finding him? An easier question to answer. "Give me the backpack." The RPG's explosions had a fiery crackle to them, a familiar heat and sound wave that kept Thalia grounded. The flashing blink obliterating the portal held none of that. A flash, and the metal ring was sundered. Fade lay on the ground before it, peppered with shrapnel big enough for Thalia to see. She felt nicks in her own skin as shards made their cuts. Small nits compared to the sudden disaster all around her. The Special Forces soldiers, to their credit, hadn't relaxed. All had their fingers on their triggers before the portal blew. Most started shooting when the first command boomed through the grove. The Rakers lurched and bullets found them. The aliens died in droves. "Where'd it come from?" Thalia shouted towards Eve. "The blast that destroyed the portal?" "Anywhere," Eve said, both crouching in a run towards Fade. "The gardener can do what it wants here." "Then why is it letting all the Rakers die?" "I don't know." Creatures at once unfathomable and incredible collapsed under fire. They fell, replaced by the next in line. Outnumbered nearly 10-1, the soldiers backed away as they fired, pairing up to cover during reloads and reaching for grenades. The first of those explosions rocked the grove's white stone, sending body parts flying. Rakers howled, cursed, thumped, and blasted mental expletives. "This is a massacre," Thalia muttered as she knelt at Fade's side, taking a quick inventory of the man's injuries. "He'll live," Eve said, reaching and pulling out a large piece from Fade's shoulder. A battlefield move that might have been risky on Earth, that meant little amid the Grove's healing technology. "They will too." Eve's remark pulled Thalia's eyes back to the battle. Where Rakers once downed were starting to shudder back up. Even those blasted to partial bits by grenades were creeping onward towards the closest enemy. Mutilated but not dead, many Rakers came on, and the soldiers would run dry before long. What would happen when those tentacles, vines, claws, and maws caught the soldiers was obvious. "Then what are we going to do?" Thalia asked, not really expecting an answer. In Eve's shaking head, she didn't find one. Introspection and meditation only took Veronica so far. She remained in the small box of a room with a dead body and the strange chair attached to it. No door had appeared, and the gardener, after taking her bullet, had yet to return. Boredom and a subtle panic, the idea that Veronica might be stuck in a place even more isolated than the floating void, blended together to spring the young woman to her feet, to aim the stolen gun at the far wall. Veronica didn't know how many bullets were in the chamber. A nudging darkness said she ought to keep one for herself, but Veronica dismissed that idea with a look at the machine. Surely, if she needed to find an ultimate end, that device could deliver it. Instead, she'd try to escape, or at least to make some noise. Setting herself up behind the man in the chair, Veronica pointed the gun straight ahead. The metal wall bore no markings, a clean silver slate. With Ezra's body serving to block any bouncing ricochets, Veronica pulled the trigger. The gun rocked, the bullet fired into the wall. She expected a dent. She earned a hole. Light flashed from the spot, pale and brighter than the vague glow pouring into Veronica's room from the ceiling. Veronica walked around, took a look through the torn metal. Saw those same white stones spreading away, but not into a dark infinite as before. Instead, the space outside the room seemed crowded, with more rooms in the slim view. Those rooms, though, weren't made of metal. One looked like red clay, molded up into a lump. The other Veronica could see appeared to be a leafy morass, held together by thin blue branches. Altogether far more interesting than where she was. Veronica returned to her cover behind Ezra and fired several more times. Her aim wasn't up to the task, the holes sprawling around the wall. Her ears protested, ringing hard enough to make hearing anything else impossible. She needed a new tactic, and Veronica turned, again, to Ezra. "Sorry about this," she muttered. Setting the gun aside, she climbed on the stuff body and gripped the helmet linked to Ezra's skull. Mostly cables and wires, Veronica tugged on the device. With a yank, she ripped it off the corpse. She kept her eyes up, her mind on the goal. Whatever mental anguish would wait for Veronica on the other side of this whole thing could, indeed, just wait. If she made it out, her Pline fortune could pay for any number of therapists. Bracing herself against the chair, Veronica tugged. The metal arm balked, straining against its latch to the ceiling. A simpler target, that. Veronica returned to the gun, this time tearing strips of cloth from the dead man's shirt and stuffing them in her ears. She aimed, squeezed the trigger twice more. The gun clicked. Empty. The socket sparked, damaged, and sprang a possibility. With another hard tug, the arm fell free, taking Veronica in a tumble with it. She landed holding the object of her freedom, a bent and half-broken piece of lab equipment. Or, if Veronica gave it a more charitable name, a bat. The room's metal walls were thin. Time to break them down. A sapphire enclosed in a gray, hard plastic wristlet. Mayra looked at the device, the badge taken from a dead Raker obliterated in Denver and dropped into its current home. Her back protested, the backpack weighing almost as much as Mayra herself. The hope, McNichols said, was that the Grove's reputed marvels would give Mayra a boost. If not, she was to set the bomb down and use a special transmitter to send the detonation trigger. That transmitter didn't rely on wireless communication, but a literal wire, a string up to several hundred meters long. Fashioned through a little genius and a lot of speed by Army engineers over the last 2 days, the wire could, hopefully, carry the doomsday demand through the Grove's unknown environment. None of this soothed Mayra's soul. She'd been drafted into a potential suicide mission. Her country, her planet's survival played against her. All because, at some routine discussion, she'd picked Ezra as a plausible partner. If and when she found that man again, she would give him more than an earful. If she returned alive, Mayra figured the FBI owed her a big, big bonus. "When you're ready," McNichols said, in a tone suggesting she'd better be ready right now. "Or what?" A devil's grin threatened. Mayra could turn and walk away, forcing McNichols to... No. Enough. She was here, and she was about to be there. Mayra tried to do what Eve, Fade, and Thalia had mentioned. Fall into the badge, put yourself into some meditative state, and then she'd vanish off into the Grove. The fall was literal. Mayra focused on the deep blue stone and found her vision plunging towards it, as if the stone itself were sucking her in. McNichols and the soldiers vanished before popping back as panic pushed the feeling away. Mayra still stood there, still felt the dry desert heat, and heard the clacks and clicks as weapons were readied. "All right?" McNichols asked. "I think this'll work," Mayra answered, exhaling slow. Once again. Again, the sapphire. Again, the falling sensation. This time, Mayra closed her eyes and tried to let the sapphire carry her away. The concrete at her feet vanished, as did the backpack's weight, and for a brief moment Mayra seemed adrift and apart from anything at all. A ghost between realities. Until she slammed back into one she didn't know, but recognized. White stone, a wood door, the distant sound of screams and gunfire. War's horrors laid out before Thalia in vivid color. Concussive explosions, staccato pops, and sounds that had no equal in human experience erupted as Raker on special forces, violence grew. The latter, outnumbered and understanding their predicament, fought on the run. Their goal clear: to get back up the steps and towards the tower. A place with choke points, a place where the Rakers, with their greater numbers both in creatures and in tentacles, would find their advantage diminished. As good a plan as any, and one that'd leave Thalia, Eve, and the groaning Fade separated. "We're going to die if we don't get moving," Thalia said as Eve extracted another shrapnel piece from Fade's leg. Every pull came with a bloody spurt, followed by a quick Grove-facilitated quelling. "Our guys are leaving." "Not leaving," Eve said, continuing to live in a vacant zone. A fugue state embraced at the wrong time. She drifted her stare to Fade's next wound. "They're delaying the inevitable." Well, if the inevitable is death, I'm a fan of that plan. The Rakers, the swarm of dead and reviving aliens, had so far ignored the human trio near the broken portal's remnants. Instead, they dashed, floated, or swam around the sapphire audience tables after the enemies with guns. Also a good plan, both for the Rakers and for Thalia's immediate health. How long that would last, though? This only ends one way, Thalia, Eve continued. It's the gardener or us. We knew that. Still know it? The gardener, though, had yet to show itself. The voice demanding bloody retribution continued its oration, but the speaker was nowhere to be seen. Like the word of God, and, for a moment, Thalia wondered if the Crusaders of old had heard something like this as they marched to war. If they had, all the conquest and violence made sense. How could you deny a command like that? It's not God, Thalia muttered, rising. It said as much, right? This is all a big construct, built over eons or something. The gardener has to have a body, or a source, one we can kill or unplug. We just have to find it. Good luck with that. You going to help, Eve, or just mope? A new sound came from Thalia's back, and she turned around, putting up her fists into a brawler's stance. Pefit, though, deserved no haymaker. The Raker, apparently unbloodied, waddled up on its claws. Its skin cape billowed. I know where the gardener lives, Pefit said. I can take you. See, Thalia said, glancing back at Eve. This is what being useful looks like. Eve took Fade's right arm, threw it over her shoulder, and, with a grunt, stood up with her fellow Raker leaning on her. She looked past Thalia to Pefit. You know where to go? Then led on. Fast. Only if you promise, Pefit fluttered. The gardener must be destroyed. For all of us. Buddy, Thalia said, you get us to that bastard, I'll put it under. Guaranteed. Satisfied, Pefit spun around and began a hopping walk. Awkward, always seeming like its slick, undulating form was about to fall over, the Raker found some real speed. Enough to put Thalia at a jog, with Eve and Fade following one lurch at a time. Go, Eve said. Don't wait up. The fighting had progressed as the Special Forces wanted, off to Thalia's left. Their gunfire climbed the tower's broad stair, pulling the Rakers with them. None followed or worried about the human trio and their alien pal bobbing away beyond the audience tables into the creamy distance. Soon the tables disappeared, the extent of intelligent civilizations petering out after a few minutes at a good pace. Clean white stone replaced them, seemingly running into the infinite pale horizon. Thalia set aside her doubts about just running for eternity with the bland, accurate argument that they had no alternative. Nevertheless, she had questions. How'd you find it? She asked Pefit. The gardener? The structure is the secret, the alien replied. We think we're somewhere vast, but that isn't so. Think you can explain it? Pefit swiveled an eye her way, without interrupting its floppy push forward. It's taken me so many of our own years to figure this out, and our years are longer, if I understand it, than yours. What I mean to say is that the Grove is no simple thing, but it might be the key to dismantling this disaster. Love it. Go on. Life is encoded. Atomic particles, nucleotides. Stripped down to its most basic parts, we are a sum of minuscule pieces arranged in a precise formation. Space and time aren't much different. Not alive, but still precise. The gardener's people learned how to control those coordinates and manipulate them to their own ends. Mess with biology and where that biology is, sure. Thalia wasn't all that sure, and while the stones seemed like they'd keep on for eternity, she figured they'd get to an end sooner or later. Best to keep Pefit moving. The badges have something to do with it? They're the processors. They read your composition, and when you focus on them, they break you down into your smallest piece, along with anything you're holding, touching, in your immediate space. They compress you, if you will, and then send you here. Wait, I'm getting destroyed every time one of these badges gets used? Pefit squinted his eyes, a motion Thalia could swear was a laugh. Every time. An exact copy is reassembled here in the Grove, so exact you would never know. The portal simply does the same in reverse, sets your coordinates in space and reassembles you at the destination. Then this is, what, some micro-universe? Not at all. As far as I can tell, this is a vast place, built by the gardener or its predecessors to serve as a home apart from the natural universe. Think of it as another dimension, or a virtual program, or whatever helps you best. The important thing is that it's a place controlled by laws they create, ones we can use. Pefit didn't give Thalia a chance to ask another question, instead stopping dead. Thalia matched him, looking ahead at the endless flagstone line. The audience tables were well behind them now, the gunfire a distant popping. "Reach out," Pefit said, "carefully." Thalia did so, stretching her arm before her and hitting a hard, smooth surface, one she couldn't see, could feel. "We have our cell," Pefit continued. "It has walls." "I have been breaking them." The alien copied Thalia's reach, a full tilt with its cape skin flowing forward. While Thalia's hand stopped against nothing, Pefit flowed right on through, its claw and body beginning to disappear. "Follow, though you may need to crouch." Thalia glanced back, saw Eve and Fade not too far behind. She called to them the same instructions, then bent down, and crawled beyond the veil. Veronica stood on the stones, wincing at the cuts she'd earned bashing, and then crawling through the metal. Strange rooms, all in cubes, sprayed out in every direction. The more normal ones with mud and vines gave way to some seemingly made from skin and bones, to glass cases, to all black and yellow material she couldn't identify. She was, too, alone. Not a soul traversed the lanes. Except her, with the bent and battered remnants of the lab machine arm. Where to go would have been a mystery, save for a single marker, a warmth flowing against Veronica from her left side. A dry heat, like exhaust from a machine or a focused lamp. Tired, confused, and without options save searching, Veronica walked towards it. She kept her head on a swivel as she went, taking in the various nightmares. None had doors, confirming Veronica's growing suspicion that these were all traps, designed, perhaps to take a species in as needed and suck the guts out of them. Where those guts went, Veronica couldn't tell. Into the ground? The ether? Something worse? It didn't take long to find the heat's source, no more than several sets of blocked rooms. The wash emerged from a broad circle, one the same white as the flagstones. The heat poured off what lay inside. What Veronica could see looked like brackish water. A brown-green, not quite sludge. The pool itself was huge, larger than the lap pool Veronica's father had back at their estate, a place Veronica figured she'd never see again. The pool's center caught her attention from distance, namely, the thing seeming to sit in it. A hunched, gelatinous creature, a sparkling white with rainbow swirls undulating at random around its body. Tendrils, fat and short, swept through the brown mixture, waving it this way and that. What passed for a head rested round and stretched, an oval atop a larger blob. From her distance, Veronica saw no eyes. She did, though, see the bright red splatter as the creature turned in a slow circle with its tendrils. A cherry burst in its upper right, where a shoulder might be if the thing had muscles. At the mark's center, a dark pit, a bullet hole. The gardener, the real thing, and now she was going to kill it. Chapter 19. A Little Spark. Creeping with a huge, heavy backpack wasn't easy. Mayra tried to crouch, found herself nearly falling over, and used the wall to get back standing. Would the bomb detonate if it hit the ground? Unlikely, but some things were better assumed than tested. The white stone room let her discover this without interruption, though the gunfire kept getting louder. Not, though, right outside. Mayra took a steadying breath, promised Ezra another tongue lashing for putting her in this spot, and went to the door. A stone balcony outside, what appeared to be a tower, the gunfire coming from below. Use the bomb to force a peace. That was the plan. Yet Mayra didn't take another step towards that overhang. She'd been to murder scenes, been a part of task forces, and seen an alien Raker mashed up by bullets just hours ago, but the war going on below hit a different level. Fleeing, hiding, and hoping the victors took pity on her seemed like better choices than just diving over. At least they did, until a fresh sound came from behind her. Boots on the ground, gear jangling, and questions in. French. Mayra wheeled around, a difficult move with the heavy backpack, and found herself staring down 3 soldiers with weapons raised. Not American, but human. "Friend," Mayra said over the shooting below. "Please." "Friend of who?" asked the trio's leader, approaching her. "What is in the backpack?" Definitely French, going by the man's accent. "You humans. The backpack's a bomb." A gun in her face and otherwise alone had Mayra going with the truth. "A bomb?" The leader, clean-shaven and immaculate, stepped up to her while the other 2 streamed past. "For what?" "And who's shooting?" "The bomb's a bet to stop what you're hearing. We force everyone to play nice, or this goes boom." "The trigger?" Mayra held up the detonator. The man stared at it, then met her eyes. "Can I trust you?" "The way I see it," Mayra said, "we don't have a choice." The man nodded, sharp, then looked past her to the ledge. "You know how to get down?" "Nope." Hex had a storied career, though much of that story hid in classified records. He'd sloughed through shallow swamps in the dark, dropped from helicopters into enemy territory, and had spent several decades in a state of constant readiness to do just about anything his country required. Not once had he dreamed that'd mean fighting aliens. When the flash hit, destroying the portal and their objective, Hex reverted to the backup plan. Find a secure position and wait for reinforcements. McNichols had guessed a few dozen badges had been secured around the world, and they'd be used to pour in soldiers. Whether any of those soldiers would have a way of getting home was a question Hex couldn't answer. Especially when his rifle clicked, warning Hex he needed another clip. He made it to the stairs, along with most of his team, spraying their way clear with frantic, precise bursts. Thankfully, their rounds did the damage they were supposed to, knocking the creatures down and out. Down, anyway. The out part was becoming a deadly question, as the 10 soldiers Hex had left reunited with the 6 remaining from the other force on the stairs. The aliens were getting back up. "Back!" Hex barked, his unit and its circumstantial counterpart backstepping towards the tower. "Conserve ammo!" Precise shots. Those words were superfluous, as every soldier here was best in class, a professional who knew they'd been cut off with the portal's destruction. They'd brought extra clips, and full canteens with rations, too. The food and water didn't seem necessary, given the swarming mass of horrors writhing towards them. And that constant head-blasting command to kill. "Hold at the arch," Hex continued, aiming and blasting a floating thing that looked like a cross between a cloud and a beetle, all spindly limbs and drifting darkness. "Rotate fire teams and get ready to hunker down." The Rakers continued their rush, trampling each other in their charge. 2 grenades halted their momentum, blasting into the crowd and silencing the shooting. Again, ichor and body parts mingled with stone shards in the air. But the delay worked. The soldiers reached the tower. As Hex slid behind his team, he confirmed the numbers. Confirmed, too, that Fade was missing. Not great. Still, survival was now the priority. His soldiers formed up, the first team slotting into 2 pairs across the tower's entry and aiming down the stairs. The others broke back, checking jammed weapons, ammo supplies, and tending to minor wounds. The damage here was a different sort. Gashes from claws, a broken wrist and ankle from heavy bashes, and burns from acidic spit, blood, or some other alien feature. Not something they'd been trained to deal with, but they'd been told to expect the unexpected. This definitely qualified. "Hex!" The shout came from above, drawing Hex's eyes, and with them his rifle. Mayra's face appeared over the edge, a hand waving. Several more heads appeared next to her, ones with helmets suggesting gear, ammo, weapons. "How do we get down?" Hex grinned. "Jump." When Thalia and Pafit disappeared, Fade accepted it as just one more random act. The portal blowing up, the gardener's oppressive demand to murder, and the sudden shift in the past 72 hours from saving the world to attacking so many others. Fade had tried to push it away with a focus on Jaycee, a simplified objective, but now he had metal pieces in his body. Eve hadn't been able to yank them all out, and a godlike being calling for his guts. Hard to relax. "Think you can walk?" Eve asked. "We're falling behind." "In the race to get slaughtered? Maybe we'll get lucky and they'll have the gardener dead by the time we get there." "That's not what we want." Fade threw a sharp look her way. "It's not?" "Because, and I don't know if you've noticed, the gardener sure as hell wants us dead. If we kill it before we have a new portal, there's no way out of here." "I'll choose our collective imaginations over getting that thing to leave us alive." "We need to get the gardener to back off, Fade." "It's the only way." "Then you'd better hurry." Fade lifted himself off of Eve's arm, his limp almost tumbling him to the stones. Old instincts kicked in and he balanced himself, took to a stable trudge. He waved Eve on, and she dashed ahead, going into a full-blown sprint only to slow at some invisible point. A hesitation, then a crouch, and she too disappeared. The sight had Fade pulling up short. Looking back, he saw the tables and, eventually, the stairs, and the great tower at their top. Flashes suggested the fight continued, had moved into the building. He'd not met those soldiers for long, but Fade assumed some of them were dead now. Some of the many human lives likely lost in this stupid conflict. One, the gardener, started. Fade couldn't forget that. Hubris, vanity, and a fiery temper. All qualities of a being that wanted to safeguard life all the way to enlightenment. Eve wanted to strike a deal with that monster. Number. Fade would see it, dead. He wheeled towards where Eve had disappeared and stumbled on. Every step felt stronger than the last, and a look down at Fade's body showed cuts and gashes closing, forcing silver shards out from muscle and skin. Gross. Good. Fade's shoulder hit the invisible wall first, a hard, tooth-rattling stop. Fade stared at it, reached out, and traced the hard nothing. Thalia and Eve had crouched, and Fade did the same, running his hands along until he found the hole. The other side came in a blink, one at first not too different from the one Fade had left. White flagstones stretched ahead. Except now the landscape wasn't an eternal courtyard, but one broken up by cubes. Disturbing, awful cubes, but cubes. Fade crinkled his nose, winced at one to his left, a bluish-gray box that seemed to be weeping brown sludge from cracks running top to bottom. For being civilization's pinnacle, this guy has the worst taste, Fade muttered to himself. Ahead, Fade didn't see Eve, nor Thalia and Pefit. He didn't need to guess where to go, though. Without the gunfire, the quiet gave opportunity for a new sound to fill the void. And that sound was shouting, human shouting, and not far away. Fade limped off, stumbling past several cubes that'd linger in his nightmares forever, until he came to a big, round pool. A milky, rainbow blob of a thing sat in the middle. Standing next to it, a battered metal bar in her hands, was, of all people, Veronica Pline. "Don't!" Thalia and Eve yelled together. Veronica did. She swung, and the bar crashed into the blob's oblong head. It bent, wrapping around the strike, before the bar bounced back. Veronica stumbled, fell into the pool with a splash. The blob, apparently unharmed, though Fade noticed a cherry splatter around its upper right side, shuddered. Rose. Not like a creature standing, more like a plant growing, more milky matter mixed with rainbow swirls drawing from the pool until it towered over Veronica. All this time, I have tried to deliver utopia. The voice, like the kill command back in the grove, hammered into their heads. Fade felt it like a nausea wave, bringing him to his knees. I alone stayed behind. I sought to give the universe our gifts. Instead, time and again, you slap them away. I am tired, and I am done. The blob stretched, looming over Veronica, who sat up, grabbed the metal bar. I shall be unique, and you shall be nothing. And the gardener crashed down upon Veronica, burying her in a god's fury. In retrospect, as the rainbow swirls filled Veronica's vision like an ice cream delusion, attempting to kill the most powerful being in the universe with a jagged metal stick was a bad plan. Veronica would have pitched the argument to her friends, back when she had those, like this. It had been a very frustrating day, and she needed a win. That win smothered her, pushed her down beneath the pool's surface and battered Veronica against the hard floor. The metal bar fled her grip, as panic sent her limbs flailing, though the gardener's weight pinned them, and her down. She closed her eyes, shut her mouth in reflex, felt the press on her lips and lids. Her father had once had his face cast for a mold, some bust collection with other tech luminaries, and he'd mentioned it felt like getting suffocated. As a reference, it did nothing to quell her panic. Something entered her ears. Not pool water. Thicker, gel-like, and hot. It burrowed deep while Veronica held her breath, awaited the pain as her need for air grew. As a way to die, you've chosen an ugly one. Not quite a voice, not sound. More like a pattern played within her mind. One Veronica didn't know how to answer. Even now, I still need nourishment. Every so often, I get it this way. A treat. Thank you. The pattern echoed, then fell silent, and the gel in her head grew hotter still. Why was it so many powerful things were so damn ugly? Thalia gaped as the gardener buried Veronica, like getting buried by a milkshake. Next to her, Pefit fluttered some nonsense about finding a way to kill the gardener, as if you could stab a liquid to death. Beating it with a stick obviously didn't work. The various boxes around them offered no solutions. They didn't even have doors. The huge pool wasn't any better, with its sludgy water devoid of other tools. She'd brought a combat knife with her from Eve's apartment, as if that'd do any good. Her handguns offered a better chance, and Thalia drew both, squeezed off a few rounds into the roiling rainbow-white mass. The bullets disappeared, no satisfying red splatter remaining. "We need another way," Pefit said. "Thanks for pointing that out." Was the sarcasm warranted? Maybe not. But Thalia felt rather loose in the moment. She'd become so unmoored from reality that anything other than bemusement seemed unsuited to the situation. "There's nothing here," Pefit seemed to be as defunct as Thalia, listing out the obvious in desperate, hopeless tones. A minor miracle the Grove's translating machines could parse the inflection as well as the words themselves. How useful those would be. Focus, Thalia. Veronica was buried beneath the gardener. The creature's head had rolled back up its lump of a body to jiggle at the top, a marshmallow crowning a mound. Thalia couldn't lift it, couldn't shoot it, and saw no way to electrocute it or the water. It was thick, brown, like a slurry, like a polluted pond, and polluted ponds could burn. Thalia, Eve said, running up next to her. What is that? Our target. It's killing, Veronica. You have a lighter? Pefit swiveled an eye, curious. Eve squinted back. A lighter? Need a way to burn all this. Did someone say, burn? Fate announced, bringing up the back in a limp already better than before. Because I have something that'll burn real good. The man reached to his belt, pulled off a small red canister. Brought these for the Rakers, but this is a better use. Before Thalia could interrupt, Fade pulled the pin and threw the canister right at the rainbow-white monster. The canister burst, sending molten sparks flying. Flames engulfed the gardener's milky body, which blackened like a marshmallow where the grenade struck. Its shape quivered, attempted to slough away from the fire. The canister's remnants, burning bright, rolled down the gardener's side into the pool, hitting the sludge and setting the biomatter alight. And there, left by the gardener's burning flight, was Veronica's body. The girl's head broke the pool's shallow surface, and Thalia leaped in, the warm sludge soaked through her boots, the squiggly, stringy stuff wiggling into her toes and against her legs as she waded towards Veronica. Heat blasted as the fire fed, the gardeners panicked, oozing along the pool's wall, creating a burning wall along the far side. Don't let this be a waste, Thalia muttered, splashing to Veronica's body and grabbing the girl's shoulders. Weighed down by so much heavy sludge, Veronica wasn't an easy drag. The fire, blazing orange and blue, bore down, and Thalia began making the brutal calculation on whether to ditch the girl to save herself. The kind of no-nonsense logic that had brought Thalia and Fade through countless jobs, where tossing a friendly gangster to the feds meant keeping their own hands cuff-free. Veronica hadn't been a friend, had been an active foe, but she was barely an adult. She was just like Jaycee, and she sure didn't deserve to burn to death. A splash washed over Thalia's back, and she saw a second set of hands match her own. Eve's, the Raker taking Veronica's right arm and letting Thalia pull the left. Together they outpaced the fire, dragging Veronica to the pool's edge and over it. Thalia fell on the girl, checking for a pulse, for breathing, and found both. So she gave Veronica a light slap, and the girl's eyes snapped open. It's dying! A leap with a tactical nuke on her back seemed like a terrible plan, but Mayra didn't have other options. Drop it? Let the big backpack plummet? The other French soldiers around her leapt over, and she saw them caught by the bluish pad at the tower's base. Who knew, though, how that thing operated? Would it catch an inanimate object? Or would it stop Mayra, but not the thing on her back, letting the backpack crush her? Lot of questions here, Mayra called back, as Hex asked why she hadn't jumped yet. At the tower's base, at least, the soldiers seemed to be holding their own. Hex's line kept up steady fire, mingling with an occasional grenade's crunching pop. The Rakers seemed unwilling to breach that defense, which in turn gave Mayra more time to ponder. To doubt. You stay up there, Hex said, and something's going to come at you from one of those other doors. Can't help you then. A fair point. Though Mayra saw and heard no intruders on her own level. The other doors were all shut, only stone and her own cowardice. Just another thing to curse Ezra for. She vaulted. the act more from nerves than conscious thought. Mera's knees scuffed the stone, tearing her pants as the backpack's weight made her less an athletic highlight and more a tumbling folly. She turned end over end, screaming as she fell, and landed in a soft, all-air glove. "Look at that," Hex said, stepping into the space and helping Mera right herself. "This place isn't so dumb after all." "Still think it's pretty dumb." Mera glanced around, confirmed the line at the tower's entry, plus additional soldiers stationed around dark alcoves along the tower's periphery. "What's the situation?" "Sustained for the moment. The voice telling everyone to come kill us went quiet, which has all those aliens backing off." Hex looked like he wanted a cigar to chomp as he spoke. "Good thing, as the way they were throwing themselves at us would have meant a rout before too long. Not that we have anywhere to run to." "Those alcoves? Don't know where they go or how far." "Place like this, figure it's best to stay close to where we know an extract existed." "Existed? Portal's gone. Blown apart. We'll need a new way home." "Until then we're trapped." Hex nodded at the backpack. "That our new negotiating tool?" "It is. Now we just need to find someone to negotiate with." The gardener fled the pool, breaking itself on the edge. Its head and a chunk of its upper, sloping self squelched onto the stones and lay there, quivering. The rest of it, and the pool, burned. A grand blaze, one Fade would have enjoyed more if he hadn't joined Peffet in tracking the gardener's flight. The pair stood over the gardener's ruin, the rainbow white swirl blackened here and there where the flames had come too close. "We need to kill it," Peffet said. "Soon it will recover, and try something else." "I'm with you there." Fade crouched, ignored the pain peppering him as he did. Another metal piece squeezed out from a healing cut in his ankle, bouncing off his shoe to the ground. "Think we'll just throw it back into the barbecue." He reached, grabbed the gardener's jelly head. It molded under Fade's fingers like putty, then began to run up Fade's hand, wrist, arm, a devouring alien like in too many movies. So Fade did what those idiots didn't, and swung his arm into the nearby pool. The fire took to its new food with gusto, torching the gardener's remnants, letting Fade shake the crisped pieces off. The mild burn remaining on his forearm tickled, the grove's healing already getting to work. "Well done," Peffet breezed at Fade's back. "Who are you again?" Veronica's statement brought the group back together in the burning pool's shadow. Ash flakes drifted through the hot air as she repeated what the gardener had told her. It had tried for so long, and humans had broke its spirit. A god had let itself die of apathy. "And my incendiary grenade," Fade pointed out. "So wait, the gardener just goes and, reads books for a few millennia?" Thalia asked. "Its species reached enlightenment, decide it's boring and vanish off somewhere, and the gardener sits and waits for some company?" Veronica shrugged. Fade laughed. Even Peffet stared into the middle distance, that classic pose of deep thought. "Moral imperative," Eve said next. "I can see that." They believed they'd achieved everything, so the next job was getting others to reach the same heights, stop suffering, ease pain, and so on. "Oh yeah," Fade said. "They really eased a lot of pain. Goals and the paths taken to reach them are two different things." "Right, and speaking of paths," Thalia said, "how are we breaking this news?" "Because I'm not about to tell the universe it's all a free-for-all." They looked around at each other, waiting for an answer that didn't come. Without the gardener, the grove's mystery box seemed like it would just be that. Peffet had found the wall, but it wouldn't say whether it had found anything else. "Then we go back," Fade said. "Make sure our pals aren't blasting or eating each other. Figure out how to get the portal going again. Let people go home, find their families. Let others explore this place. We have time." You don't know that. Veronica spoke from the ground, holding herself. The grove could collapse at any minute, any hour. We can't control that, Eve said. If it shatters, it shatters. Until then, we have to act like it's going to stick around, and any alien can go anywhere. First, we make peace. Fade pointed at Eve. Everyone hear that? She said I'm right. No taking it back, either. Chapter 20. The Missing. Walking away from the myriad alien cubes and the gardener's charred remnants felt a little like leaving treasure behind, but Peffet and Eve made a convincing argument. Somewhere near 100 Rakers and human soldiers were going to keep killing each other if they didn't call a peace. Except, working their way back through the broken, invisible wall, a spot they could only find thanks to Peffet's prior scouting, the group found an apparent ceasefire. The Rakers had sprawled among the audience tables, ordering up food, medical supplies, and showing the grove functioned without the gardener around. Hex and his commandos, along with Mayra and her backpack bomb, held the tower. An untenable spot, given the potential Raker ambushes from upper floors and the need, however, held at bay by the grove, to eat, sleep, and find a toilet. Eve and Peffet took their newfound mediator roles to heart, working first with the Rakers, while Fade, Thalia, and Veronica scaled the steps to Hex and the tower. After Fade delivered, with customary panache, the tale of the gardener's roasting, Mayra interjected with a most pertinent question. Where is Ezra? The FBI agent stood at a slouch, the heavy backpack weighing on her. She refused to set it down, saying she'd been trusted with the bomb, and someone else might screw it up. Fade could understand that. He'd tried to keep Jaycee out of his life's work for the same reason, and it made the reveal harder. Ezra's dead, Veronica said, no tears in her eyes. The gardener killed him. Mayra took the information with a gulp, then asked for details, ones she'd need to give the agency and potentially Ezra's family, or, well, his distant relatives. He was hooked up to a machine. I don't know what it was for, but it had dug into his head. Fade winced, and Mayra went gray. Don't chase it, Fade said. You're thinking you should have been there. Partners and all that. What happened to Ezra wasn't your fault. It wasn't anything anyone could have stopped. The gardener could have killed us all if it wanted to. Then why didn't it? Hex asked, at last letting his rifle hang by a strap instead of rest in his hands. Doesn't this all feel a little too easy? Raids on Earth, a promise of retribution, put to a stop by a couple dozen soldiers? My view, Thalia said, is that the big ones tend to underestimate everyone else. The gardener probably hadn't faced real resistance. Ever. It had become cocky, or just assumed we'd fold. It didn't understand how stubborn we are. Little chuckles and glances around confirmed nobody had a better explanation. At least not until Veronica spoke up. I think it was tired, I think it was frustrated, and I think it was done. Veronica turned back to the steps, the aliens mingling at their bottom. I don't think this is over yet. Great, Fade said. Love the optimism. But how about we set aside the guesses for something practical and get ourselves a new portal? Then you all can go home and get a proper drink, and I can find my daughter. Getting anything new in the grove was, on the face of it, pretty simple. You asked the audience. The Rakers had already thought of that, and several sapphire tables, one more than twice Fade's height, and another the size of a small pool, spat out pieces one by one. More mechanically inclined aliens took charge of fitting them together, a slow process that left everyone else to a rough mingle. While Peffet and Eve calmed down the killing tension, the fact remained that the humans had come in guns blazing. The consequences, in a grove without the gardener's assistance, were clear to see. Bodies, dead tentacles, and clumps of gooey matter lay about the white stones. more than one human among them, too. Eve requested Hex and the others leave the tower and march to a spot off beyond the audience tables, well away from the Rakers and any others that might be traveling to the grove. Hex objected to giving up his best defense until Mayra said she'd stay right there with the bomb. Anything went strange and she'd detonate it, torching the tower and most of the audience tables. That threat did little to calm things down, but no Raker did more than twitch and spit a foul curse in the human's direction as Hex marched his combined commando unit down the steps and away. "One problem at a time," Eve said to Fade, who, along with Thalia, had stayed with Mayra and Veronica at the tower's entrance. "Every species here understands there's nothing to gain by starting a new fight, but you can imagine how they feel." "Blame the gardener," Fade said. "Not us." "Okay, Fade, why don't you go tell them that?" "I will." But Thalia grabbed his shredded uniform and kept him back. "The real question," Eve continued after giving Fade a determined eye roll, "is what's going to happen once that portal gets back up and running, when Rakers can travel again. Without a gardener, there's no direction, no leadership. It's a free-for-all." "What about you and Pefit?" Mayra asked. "We're taking advantage of shock." Trying to put a framework together, Eve nodded towards the audience tables. "You already saw how our leaders are acting. How many other Raker worlds will go the same way? This place has the potential to advance a society beyond comprehension. It's a resource unmatched by anything else. We know what people do when there's a single treasure." Fade whistled. "A big old fight's about to happen. That what you're saying?" "I think anyone assuming different species with unique value systems, communicating abilities, levels of technology, and more will agree to share the grove is naive. Pefit's going to try and keep things calm. I'm going to help." "Like I said, a big old fight. I'm thinking we should win it." Thalia coughed. "A little rabid, Fade. Even for you." "His bad insult aside, Fade has a point," Eve said. "The gardener controlled all of us because we knew it could destroy us. It made our differences irrelevant. If humans can take over, then we can keep the peace." "Sure, keep the peace," Fade said. "Something we're so good at. But that's just it. We can't assume anyone else can do it better. So we agree? That portal opens. We go and get our reinforcements." At their nods, he grinned. "Well, you all, anyway. I'm getting Jaycee back." "Hey," Thalia said a moment later, as they'd turned towards the portal construction project. "Where'd that kid go?" "Veronica?" The darkness and motes hadn't changed. The cool, infinite black wrapped Veronica as she slipped into the tower alcoves and through to the graveyard beyond. The tombstones, those collected stacked mementos, were her beacons as she walked. Now, though, she didn't explore without direction. The gardener had been able to move about the grove at will, and while Veronica couldn't yet do that, she had a new idea. Pefit had found a wall and opened it, revealed the barrier between the grove's areas wasn't immutable. She could find others, new paths, and eventually do what was promised, what the gardener had offered in its last seconds after the fire took hold, before it had released her. If you want these chains so badly, then find them, take them, wield them. With the grove under her control, Veronica would get anything she had ever wanted, including her father. For a girl with nothing left, it was everything. So she walked, reached, and searched. Jaycee saw madness coming. She'd not lost herself yet in the Zinwi cycles. She'd not been swept away in time's shifting river, but she felt it, the untethering beyond meals, her body's needs, and those times the Zinwi turned off the lights. Sleep didn't wait for her, and the Zinwi had noticed. The next time she'd eaten, the following slumber hit like a hammer's blow. She spent the next day vomiting. Progress came. Halting stops and starts, drawings and letters, speech and motion. Jaycee laid down on tables, let them poke her body with needles, and take samples of her skin, hair, fingernails. She was the science experiment, and the prisoner. She knew how this went, what would happen if she refused. For now she had her life and her sanity. She had a soft spread beneath her back, a cool and humid cavern for a cage, and regular meals that hadn't yet killed her, though Jaycee's stomach remained a tender thing. She repeated the names then, her father, her mother, friends, and the details of where she lived. Not aloud, a silent mantra with her eyes closed, a dedicated ritual. A Zinwi stood over her. She recognized it, the same Raker who'd been in the grove, that she'd followed here. It stared down at her with what seemed like hate or suspicion. The lights were out. In its massive hand, the Zinwi held a device she'd seen before. Like a tablet, the thing had a screen and loops that wrapped around the Zinwi's arm to keep it in place. The Zinwi moved the screen over Jaycee's eyes as she lay there. Another experiment. And if she'd learned anything over her too long time here, lying still was the best way to get it over with. The screen flickered on. A familiar face appeared. Serious, an unusual look for her father. In a uniform, it looked like, though one that had gone through rough times. "That's him," Jaycee said. "My dad." "Can I go?" The Zinwi snorted, took the screen away. It looked as much as Jaycee could read their expressions, satisfied. Then the creature stepped over her, opened the door, and stomped away. The rocky barrier slid closed behind it. Her questions went unanswered. Nobody seemed to know. None of the Rakers recalled Jaycee's disappearance. With the portal working, Fade had assumed it would be easy to dip into some other world and pick up his daughter, but now he was met with a harder puzzle. Several hundred audience tables, and Jaycee could have gone to any of their assigned worlds. Worse, time was ticking. Rakers were dipping out, returning home with different ideas. Hex, Fade, and Eve all agreed that any civilization couldn't just abandon the Grove and all its promise. Badges would be used to bring forces into play, and soon the Grove would be an armed standoff. Infinite wealth, health, and power was a pretty good lure. They were having a conversation right now, near the humans' audience table. Mayra there too, that backpack still weighing her down. What would she do when a nap came calling? No, stop that. Fade wasn't a president, wasn't a general. He was a father. He would find her.